All right, Leon. Man, there's a couple things I'm really interested in with this conversation. So this deals with tariffs. This deals with a Canadian manufacturing company in its original inception. I think back in the '70s or something. You and this company being sold. So you've participated in like an off ramp or exit, and also being bought out when in a period of time where you weren't sure that you necessarily wanted to, and then with the onset of tariffs, things shifted and really changed the landscape of things, and then that exit actually became more of a reality. So, I've got a couple other questions specifically in this, but if you want to introduce yourself, maybe a quick little bit about yourself, how you got involved in the company, would be awesome.
Yeah, my name is Liohn Sherer. I'm the former president of Ideal Security. I joined my father-in-law. The company was founded by my wife's grandfather originally in 1956, so I joined in 2016. There was no succession plan. My wife and her siblings weren't involved in the company, and I spent a few years working closely with my father-in-law to kind of, as he put it, kick the tires and see if it was something I wanted to continue. And I found that I really loved running a small business. You know, door hardware isn't sexy, and I didn't, to be honest, I wasn't passionate about the product line, but I was really passionate about running a small business and managing the team and the kind of sandbox that it gave me to play in and deal with problem solve. I really enjoyed it, and the plan was to make that my career for the really stay for the rest of my life and run this little lifestyle business.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's in just outside of this conversation, we were talking a little bit, and you're explaining what it was like to have employees, and then be in this situation where, just in the economic, geopolitical, economic, political environment, tariffs have entered the scene over the last, couple of years and impact different industries more than others. And I think that you had mentioned that there was interest in the company. Your company was attractive to investment prior. It wasn't something that was really high on your list of priorities, but then the tariffs actually impacted that equation to a point where exiting was important. Can you share a little bit about what that process was like?
Yeah, Richelieu Hardware, so they're a big Quebec-based Canadian company. They're in a lot of hardware lines, including some overlap with our own, and they had approached me in probably 2024, maybe a little earlier, to talk about an acquisition, and I told them at the time, happy to talk. Thought there was a lot for me to learn from for maintaining the conversation with them, but I told them that I wasn't really looking to sell, and a cash injection wasn't going to change much of our future, and that's not what we were looking to do. At the time, the I wasn't looking to scale Ideal, and it kind of felt like a place where there was potential but limited upside, but almost no downside risk. We were stable, cash flow was fine, and we had a good operating model. And when tariffs came into play, we imported everything from China and Taiwan, and half of our business was in the U.S. My entire growth strategy, we'd done strategic planning in November, December of 2024, and all of our growth strategy was based on the U.S. And we were importing stuff from China and Taiwan and landing it in Canada and then crossing the border into the U.S. And when the tariff wars started, suddenly I didn't know how we were going to make it profitable, and I didn't know how we were going to compete against our U.S.-based competitors anymore. And we'd gone from limited but safe upside to, what would look like no upside with unlimited downside for me. And I just didn't like it. I'm not a wartime CEO. I'm not built as an entrepreneur, and that stress level wasn't fun for me. And so I very quickly uh, made the decision or came to the realization that I didn't want to fight through this. And fortunately, Richelieu was still there. And as a small business, you're really subject to the macroeconomic winds, and it's hard. As a large, effectively multinational business, you're able to, if you're a Richelieu or if you're a Prime Line Hardware, it's hard, but you don't look at shutting down in the next year or two. You just have to get through it, and you have the cash reserves and you have the size to get through whatever macroeconomic changes there are. So what was an existential crisis for us was just to some degree business as usual for them.
Hmm. Okay. We talked a little bit about systems, and I'm curious what it was like. I think it was 2016. You mentioned you came into the company, and then for the final 3 years, you were sitting in the CEO capacity. What was it like to come into an existing business? I think there's a Quebec term you mentioned,
Yeah,
rep,
repreneur. Quebec's
repreneur.
very big
Repreneur.
on this repreneurship for people who are taking over existing businesses.
Which I guess translates operator. So you step in as an operator. What was it like to come into a business that you hadn't built and then be able to bring in systems to bring improvement?
I was very lucky. I was extremely lucky to inherit a really good team of people who, for the most part, were open to embracing change, and they weren't resistant, and they weren't threatened by somebody new and young coming in. I'd been the first new hire, or the first new person to join in I think 10 to 15 years. But literally on day one, I remember Diane, who'd been there probably 35 years at the time. On day one, I don't remember what it was, but I remember that she came and asked me to look at something that she was doing to see if there was a better way to do it. And so a lot of the team was like that. There were obviously some people who, it was harder to bring them along and harder to get them to accept some of the changes I wanted to make, and that's always the case when you're taking over a business. But for the most part, the team was really adaptable and open to me trying things and to trying new things with me. So there's a lot of, you have to be ready to do a lot of change management, and you have to build the credibility for that. And I really enjoyed that, actually. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed trying new things and breaking things and apologizing when I screwed things up and building the credibility that eventually gave me a team that was willing to follow me through the entire acquisition process.
Hmm. And you mentioned that there, to some degree, those systems being put in place had a positive impact on the overall attractiveness of the firm and value of the firm at the acquisition point.
Yeah, I through the acquisition, everything. It's 2 months old now since I finished my contract last, and so everything in my head is through the lens of that. But through the acquisition, I got to see what I was really good at and what I was really not great at. When you're running a small business, like, you have to do everything and you have to think you're good at everything because that's just the nature of it. But I realize now I'm great at operations and systems, and I'm not so great at driving growth and top line growth. And I spent a lot of time, particularly in the later years, optimizing and building systems to handle growth that I wasn't driving. Um, but we did put in place we put in place a business operating system. We put in place Asana, and we built all of our operating models or operating systems on top of it. And everything's documented, and there are workflows there. And that was something that the acquiring company was less strong at and less diligent about. And it allowed us to do things with a small team that they found impressive. And so there was added value there. And in retrospect, there's two things that I see. One, I was building things that the company didn't need at the time I was building them. But on the other hand, there was value in that build when it came time to find an off-ramp. And so it's comforting for me to see that value and to see it on paper, because I could spend a lot of time looking at the last few years and going, I focused on the wrong things and I did the wrong things, and that's why we ended up where we did. I think for me anyway, it's important to see my failures and be honest about them, but also have that metric of it wasn't all failure, and you can't get everything right, but there was value built there anyway.
Hmm. So you're two months out from this. Where do things sit right now? From what I understand, you've been able to take a deep breath. July, August are summertime, obviously in Canada. And from that perspective, what are you seeing on the horizon that you're wanting to, develop next?
I see a lot of what I don't want. I'm kind of, I guess, healthily traumatized by the last year or two there. I know that I'm not ready to take on responsibility for people's paychecks and livelihoods right now. I don't want to be responsible for top line growth ever again. So I'm very clear on what I don't want. Um, I'm taking some time, but I also know what I'm great at now and what I love doing, and so that's on the operations side. It's on the systems side. The timing's worked out great, and I've been able to dive into AI for myself for small businesses, and I'm helping some companies with some small businesses do implementations there. It's fun for me, and it's challenging, and it's evolving rapidly. And what I'd like to be doing for the next few years, particularly while my kids are still in elementary school and at home, is helping other companies where I can with their systems, with their AI implementations, with, I like the term fractional COO, and helping companies that are too small to have a COO get that perspective on how to build systems and processes that can scale. And I'd like to do all that part-time, flexibly, while my kids are still young enough that I can make the best use of time with them. And then I see but I also see how my brain works, and I imagine yours too as an entrepreneur, right? There's only so much time off you can take. There's only so much not doing and not building that I'm built for, and I've already seen the limits of that. And so eventually I will go back to contributing to something bigger than myself and bigger than me, and working with a team. It's I don't think I can be a solo operator for the rest of my career. And so when the
Mm-hmm.
kids, a couple of years when they go back, or when they no longer want to hear from me, I can see diving into something bigger. I'm hopeful that I can hold off a little while.
What I'm curious to know what your support system is like. Like where, depending on either geographically where you're based or digitally, do you feel like you've found your like a network of half dozen or more like similar stage in life, similar aspirational level people to connect with?
You know, it's a good question, and I think there's a lot of people who look for this. I joined the group, a Quebec-based group called Entre Chefs. They were called the Groupement des Chefs at the time I joined. I met a guy at the C2 MTL conference, and I'd been looking at YPO, which we were way too small for, and then EO, which I was still probably too small for. Um, and Entre Chefs is like a Quebec version of this. It's for business leaders of small and medium-sized businesses to get together and build a mastermind group or forum or whatever you want to call it. And that was really great. It got me into a whole new community with the Francophone community here in Quebec. And I spent 8 years there. I built a lot of intimacy with them. It was a good network. But all through that, there weren't a lot of distributors there. I always found it shocking that my personal network is mostly professionals or video producers or independent operators, and then in Entre Chef it was a lot of manufacturing and service agencies. Now that I've moved on, I think building a new network. There was this great, and I imagine for you too, again, like you're active on LinkedIn, and I don't know if you noticed, there was like a great moment in February on LinkedIn, particularly if you were into AI, where things were clicking, and I was meeting people digitally, to your point about people who were interested in Asana and people who were interested in systems and people I could geek out with, and it felt really organic and wholesome. And that lasted about 3 weeks before the AI slop hit, and now it's just all the same post over and over again about AI. I am building that network. I'm meeting people. I don't know. What's your network like, and how do you fill that gap?
Yeah, I think getting in the room with people, a lot of the time it's through one connection with someone who's sometimes an invitation from them to like a founder dinner or to connect with others, and then just from there where people show up, that I just kind of, you get a good sense with, could be a totally different industry. And then I personally found that I just try to cycle through and I just old school DM message if there's something of value I found, or just to see what's going on, to keep in touch that way. And then from time to time, where there are reasons geographically to be in the same room together, I look to do that.
I think what's really interesting about this moment, and my everything comes back to AI for me these days, which I kind of hate, I'm sick of, but also it's just always there. But what's interesting about this moment is that it's bringing together people from, in my experience, dramatically different industries with dramatically different personal interests or even professional interests. But you see leaders of service agencies and manufacturing agencies and solo operators and chiefs of staff. There's all these people who have almost nothing in common, but are interested in this new tool, this new system, this new platform, and it's bringing people of very different interests together, and that's been great for me to talk to people, and we now have this thing in common that we're passionate about and excited about, and I think there's community building around that. In Montreal, there's a lot of events around AI that ostensibly are about AI, but really are about just sharing your interests and sharing learning and growth. So I'm going to a lot of those, and there's one actually tomorrow night that I'm excited to see.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit about Sherer.ca. This looks like this is a new initiative, something you've built up and is reflective of your own expertise.
Yeah, it's a placeholder. In my free time, I'm slowly building the website because that's fun and it's a vanity project. I am doing. I'm oddly self-deprecating about it. I'm doing consulting. I have 2 contracts now. It's what the next few years of my life are going to look like. But I'm also not yet doing lead gen and building a pipeline and really seeking out a lot of work there. So Sherer.ca is where that will eventually live when I know exactly what the offering is and when I'm looking for more work than I have coming in, I guess. Um, it's a fun thing to,
Cool.
yeah.
Okay, so Sherer.ca is is that spot, and then you're on LinkedIn at Liohn Sherer,
Yeah,
if I'm
Liohn Sherer.
pronouncing that right. Liohnsher on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that the problem that you're looking to solve in helping systems systematically improve the processes that businesses have is an important one. So a lot of business owners can continue to stay in their lane, keep their eye on the most important thing for them. And yeah, I'm excited for you to be able to find this next season, and I really appreciate you sharing candidly what it was like. I think a lot of people can put an exit as like this goal, this finish line, and not necessarily understanding the other factors around it. And so it's really helpful to hear stories that aren't just whatever hits the headlines, of exits, and see how, you were able to be able to keep almost all your employees, employed in this transition, and to do it in a way that it was unexpected. You're navigating different weather, economically, geopolitically, and to do so in a way that it seems really grounded. So, yeah, well done.
Thanks. It's hard. I honestly still feel a lot of guilt about it. I still feel a lot of mixed feelings about how it went. I'm mostly grateful. I got very lucky that I had an off ramp. I got very lucky that we were able to find value for both parties in it. I got extremely lucky with my team. I have up on the wall here a thank you card from my team that they gave me at our last kind of goodbye party, and that was really touching. I had there were people there who'd been there 40, 45 years, and people who saw their whole careers, people who I brought in now with a certain promise about building a small business together, and that all changed, and I felt like had pulled the rug out from under some people, and to have them thank me for what they saw of the work that I did is still something that I find really emotional to think about. It was tough and it was great, and it was a wonderful team to work with. I'm rambling now. Sorry, when I get started on this stuff, it kind of throws me off. Yeah, it was an experience. There's a lot to share there. There's a lot to unpack still for me, but I know where I want to go next, and I know what I'm great at, and that's something that I think is rare to get good insight into and perspective into. So if anybody's listening out there and has questions or wants to learn more, like I'm just looking to talk to people and share my experience and see how I can help others. So find me and reach out. Don't hesitate. Love to talk.
Awesome. All right, Liohn, thank you so much.
Thanks, Caleb. No pleasure.